the next movement we're gonna get into is the third of 6, and we are going to be talking about squats. This movement is probably something that you've experienced before, but if not, let's just run through a couple of things. You're gonna start in an athletic stance, feet shoulder width apart, all right, toes anywhere between straight ahead and pointing out. You know, if you're standing on the center of the clock, I wouldn't go any farther than 2 and 10, but ideally between 1 and 11, like toes pointed at 1 and 11, all right? In the hammer position, we're gonna talk about several different types of squat with the BAMF hammer, and I've got a lot of these demonstrations coming in. We're gonna do a shoulder support squat, we're gonna do front support squat, and we're gonna do several variations transferring between the two. With the shoulder support squat, the head of the hammer is gonna be sitting on your shoulder, and the handle is gonna be sitting straight out at 90 degrees from your spine. It's gonna be parallel to ground. That's not pictured here. This is a front support squat where we're gonna start with the hammer nice and tight to the body, all right? And as you sit, we're gonna extend the arms and use the weight of the hammer to counterbalance as we sit back into the bottom of the squat. Spine is gonna stay athletically neutral. So again, not curving in, not hyperflexing. You shouldn't be seeing your butt stick way out in the back. Okay, we're not working. But the key is going to be not losing the pack of the shoulder as you sit into the squat. And for a lot of us, this is gonna take time. But before we get there, depth of squat. I take this thing as low as I can go, but that's where we're gonna talk about your individual skill level, your individual athleticism. Ideally, we're gonna squat to the point where your quad is below parallel, all right? But if your physiology doesn't allow you to get that low, don't worry about it, okay? We're gonna try and push you to your level of athleticism. Eventually, we're gonna increase your mobility, we'll increase the flexibility. We're trying to get you a little bit deeper into that, but what we don't wanna do is go for depth and sacrifice the spine. So if you sit real deep into that squat and you notice your spine is getting all wonky or your hips rolling around, we wanna avoid that. Take it up to the point where you can maintain neutral and let that be the place where you begin. We have plenty of time. You know, you train for the rest of your life, so you have plenty of time to build the athleticism into dropping deeper into a squat, if that's your goal. Depending on what you're trying to get out of your programming, it might not be. But think about this. You want to be able to sit down on the toilet and stand back up without having to use your hands. That's a pretty good goal for a squat. Being able to sit down and stand up once without body weight and not have it kill your heart rate. So that's it when it comes to depth. When it comes to the hammer itself, we're gonna start with this shoulder pack position. Again, I'm thinking back, I'm thinking down. We're gonna grab the hammer, and what I want you to think about is pointing your wrists at one another. We don't wanna have them stacked, we wanna have them pointed. If they're stacked, this happens, and I can't bring the hammer in tight to my body. Also notice what happens to my shoulders. They start to roll forward. If I twist these, I can pull my shoulders back and get the hammer in nice and tight. The tighter the hammer is to my body, the less movement is happening in that center of gravity that we talked about in the pulse, okay? From here, we're going to break at the knee and the hip at the same time, okay? So you're sitting into this. This is counter to a swing. A swing is gonna be a hinge motion where we're folding in half. This squat, we're gonna knee bend, we're gonna break at the knees and the hips at the same time, and they're gonna work together to lower your body closer to the ground. As we sit in that front support position, okay, we're going to extend the arms, but keep the shoulder pack, okay? So I'm not doing this, I'm not reaching. Notice what it does to my spine. I'm keeping this back, I'm pulling these down, and I can extend my arms. If they don't get all the way straight, that's fine. I myself have an elbow injury that prevents one arm from straightening. One just doesn't go quite as straight as the other. So we wanna get out as far from the body as you possibly can and maintain this shoulder position. A lot of athletes that I work with in the beginning find that they have a lot of difficulty when it comes to being able to maintain one joint angle and have another joint do something different. BAMF hammer is a great tool to address those types of things. We'll get into it more when it comes to the press, but being able to maintain a nice tall body line and go to the maximum depth of your capability in a squat, being able to do those things together is a useful skill, right? And BAMF is gonna help you do that. We're gonna sit as low as possible. Notice the line of the knee is out past the toe. This is a matter of mobility, Okay, if your calves are super tight, you're not going to be able to keep your heel on the ground and send your knees out over your toes. Right now, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. There's no fighting it. What there is a choice. You can choose to mobilize. You can choose to do your soft tissue work and foam roll and get a hypervolt and really get into the musculature of your calves and break some of that stuff up. There are some nuances to this, all right? We could elevate your heels and let your knees drift out over the toes as a function of the heels being elevated. What that does essentially is mitigate the tightness in your calves. It's a great fix, especially if, like me, you have a VMO that fires late. Okay, this muscle on the inside of your quad. Mine happens to fire late, so I do a lot of knees over toes type work. Shout out to Ben from Knees Over Toes. Great guy. You should invest in his content. But the goal is going to be on flat ground to keep the heel down and be able to squat to depth and having enough mobility so that your knees sit out over your toes. Okay. As you stand back up from the bottom of the squat, we're going to return that hammer back to the body. And we're not just standing. I want you to think about squeezing your glutes, squeezing your quads together, and put a couple of neurons on the same type of thing that we talked about when it came to the swing, where you're standing, you're ripping the paper that you're standing on, all right? You're closing the claw cracker. So we've got as much musculature as possible tightening up to help us stand up. If you're well established with squats, you've done lots of them before, take the first couple of training sessions where you're working around and just ask yourself to be hyper vigilant. Are you maximizing the squeeze every single time? Because I'll tell you from my own experience, I don't. And when I start to fatigue, that's one of the first things. My attentiveness falls my attentiveness falls off, all right? And I am no longer paying attention to maximizing the muscular activation in these movements, okay? We're not increasing the load on the hammer. Okay, we'll increase volume of reps, we'll increase sets, we'll decrease rest. That's where we're gonna get our progressive overload in this particular case. So continuing to put brain cells on what the musculature is doing is a really useful habit to get into. When it comes to how close to the hammer be to your face, it's probably gonna touch your face. It needs to be like right here, very, very close. If someone comes into the room, you're gonna have to like get out from behind it. And getting used to the hammer being closer than you're comfortable with is going to be really useful as we move past the 6 essential movements and start getting into the really fun stuff, the flow elements. That's what we're going to do for the squat. And I'm about to be really redundant and talk about a lot of that same stuff again in the second half of this video. Let's do some shoulder support squats. So if you are just starting a fitness routine for the first time in a long time or have never done one, this movement is going to be a little bit weird because we're going to offload your body. We're going to put all the weight on one side of your body, so you're going to feel it more on one leg than the other. You're going to have to fight that and try and stay as central with your spine as possible, but we'll see that when we get to the 45-degree angle. First, feet shoulder width apart. I'm going to go ahead and bring the hammer a little bit closer to my body and clean it up into this front support position. Then we're going to go ahead and roll over. I'm going to place the striking face, okay, the smallest face of the hammer, on my shoulder. Now the handle, we're going to try and keep at a 90-degree angle from my spine, or straight out, relatively straight out from my eye line, and I'm going to bring my other arm up to match it. So what we've got is, got the handle, and then we got Sean's arm. There we go. We're going to try and keep those at the same angle as I sit in here. And I find that keeping the other hand out is useful as we sit into the squat. Now, a squat as opposed to a hinge is a knee bend. So the big difference here is my knees are going to shoot further forward than they would in a hinge motion, and I'm going to try and keep my spine as close to its starting angle as possible. So if I can draw an angle here. Oh yeah, I might be able to do that. So got this. And then as I stand back up, we've got that. So only dealing with about 28 degrees of lean. you know, for your notes, I know you're going to be keeping notes about your training as to the angle of your spine at every particular rep and noting your progress based on how small that angle gets. No, it's not that important. All right, I'm getting down to the point where my hip crease is below my knees. Okay, there it is. And if you're not sure where this is, filming yourself from the side is useful. But more important than this is squatting to the depth that you are capable at this moment in your training. We can always improve mobility. We are going to be improving strength over the course of this thing. So, you know, if you can't get there at this point, we're going to get as low as you can. All right, I'm going to keep my heels down. I'm pressing my body weight into the middle of my foot. Right, and sitting down low. Now notice here, do another angle because I just learned this and it's fun. All right, we're trying to keep 90 degrees there in the bottom. What we want to avoid is rounding. Okay, so if the this lower back into glute position starts to tuck underneath and turn so that you're like, if you had a tail, you were pointing it at your big toe. That's not good. And we want to stop the rep right before that happens. As your flexibility and your strength increases, that will get better. All right. But there we go. Now we can, I hate the background noise. I shouldn't have even been filming with sound. So quarter turn. Again, I'm going to clean this hammer up. Strike face goes to the shoulder. Find my eye line, and I'm going to keep my eye line going right past the pommel between in the little circle that my hands create here. I'm going to look through that circle, pretend that circle exists. I'm starting to sound like Bob Ross. You don't have to tell anybody about your little circle. You just have to keep looking through it. Nobody will know it's there but you. But you'll know that you're improving. You'll know that you're getting better. Gosh, Bob Ross as a strength conditioning coach would be fascinating. All right. I'm shooting my knees out over, right over the center of the toes. Okay, over that second toe. That's where I'm trying to keep that this whole time. And then as I stand tall in the top, not only am I squeezing the front of my legs, I'm also squeezing my butt because it all helps. Boom. Okay, then when you're done with these, I use the offhand to pull the hammer down and take it to a safe position on the floor. Peasy. All right, let's take a look at the front support squat. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can squat with your BAMF hammer. Obviously, there are lots of different ways that you can squat with almost anything. But with the hammer in particular, I have noticed that there are some advantages to using the piece of equipment, specifically the type of advantages you get if you're doing goblet squats with a kettlebell or a dumbbell. But also, what you'll see in the video is there's this ability to sit back into your heels, and that we're going to take a look at. That is, I don't want to say it's unique because that seems arrogant, but I have found it to be easier with an implement that has a vertical handle as opposed to like a kettlebell where you've got two tines or you're holding it by the globe. So feet are shoulder width apart, hips are tucked underneath, spine is stacked. We're in that good front support position. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to initiate the squat. My knees are going to break. My hips are going to sink down. I'm going to do the best that I can to keep my hips as close to my center line as possible. All right, and what you'll notice, obviously, is I've extended the hammer away from my body, and that has allowed me to create this nice, tall spinal angle. That's really great. All right. And that is what we're looking for. So as I stand up, what's going to happen is I bring the hammer back into my body. All right. So essentially bringing the hammer back into the body, that looks like bringing the forearms. My forearms are actually in contact with my rib cage right here. Okay. The front of my forearm is touching my rib cage. I'm focusing on pulling my shoulders back. Okay. Shoulders back and down at the same time. Okay, that's that armpit lemonade thing that we've talked about before. All right. And what we're going to focus on is, as I continue to sit into the bottom of the squat, we want to keep that shoulder position. So while I am extending my arms, what you want to avoid is having your shoulders rotate forward. That's a terrible arrow. Let's try that again. Okay. We don't want this anterior rotation, and you'll feel it. You'll feel that you're doing it if your neck starts to hurt, if you start to feel the tension in your neck, okay? Obviously, getting the hammer really close to my face, standing up tall, all right? If you are scared of hitting your face, I can guarantee you're probably going to catch it a couple times with your face. Oh, wait, I'm going the wrong direction. As I get tired, in this particular motion, I have a tendency to just rest the hammer on my forehead. Not the best, because it means we're no longer letting the load sit on the body, but, you know, it doesn't hurt much. You get used to it. You might get used to it. Look, fitness equipment is, like, training is risky, daggone it. Let's not judge one another. All right, we got the 3/4. All right, I'll clean this up. Okay, so nice high hold, head not resting on my hand, nice 90-degree clean, or 180-degree clean. All right, and again, sitting down nice and tall, keeping my weight in my midfoot, okay, not going up onto my toes. You should be able to sit your knees out past the line of your toe there, which is bueno, as long as you're mobile enough to do so. If you're not mobile enough to do so, check out my buddy Ben, Knees Over Toes guy. He's got a lot of great stuff to help with that. I've used his program myself. Boom. So that is the front support squat. I'm moving in the wrong direction again. Doggone it, I was. Okay. Here we go. Nice and deep. Arms are extended. Okay, not fully straight, but that is the sweet spot. Okay? Lovely. All right? Front support squat. So there we go, squats. Lots of variations there. In the beginning, even if you're not squatting with the hammer, go ahead and get yourself moving. The thing that we want more than anything is for you to be able to sit down in a chair and get back up without needing the assistance of somebody else. It's going to be important, especially if you are, not spry. But yeah, you can always shoot us video, and I will happily break it down for you, or we can schedule some time where we can hop on a video call and I can take a look at motor pattern profile. Okay. So in the meantime, happy hammering, and something feels different. I don't know. It'll come to me.